amazing architecture and the symmetry within these honeycombs that they create, and then they fill it with all this sweet honey, right? With nothing. It takes a lot of hard work, and it takes more than one of them to do that. It takes a community of them to do that, right? Whereas what do flies build? What is the nectar in your life? What is the sweetness that you want in life? And you go out there and harvest it. You go out there and build something out of it. But you need to put some work into it, because it ain't gonna come to you. This is a dream out of reach, and push it away. Fuck that. Bring it in. Yeah? Bring it in and let it be part of you. Let it be part of your life. Go out there and get it. Just change your mindset as if you got it.
Welcome to another Martial Mind Power podcast. I'm Jatinder with Sifu Lak, and we're going to be dropping some wisdom bombs for you today. Sifu Lak, as always, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm hot, man. It's so hot. The weather is at the moment really, really hot, which is good. I think this is probably one of the hottest summers we've had in a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hot in the next couple of days. Weather's going to hit 40s in the UK, which is very rare. So yeah, it's nice. The thing is, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and he said, I said, when it's hot, people complain it's too hot. When it's cold, people complain it's too cold. When it's rainy, people complain it's too wet. And my friend turned around and she goes, it's human nature, right, to complain all the time. And in particular, Brits do complain about the weather, no matter what it's like,
We do.
So, when it's cold, people want it to be warm and hot. When it's hot, people can't handle it and they want it to be cool.
Yeah.
So, you can't win. But this is really the beauty of it is, and the beauty of the work that we're doing here is about changing your mindset, changing your attitude, So if it's hot, embrace it, because it's not going to last forever, right? I was speaking to an acquaintance earlier on, and she turned around and says, well, it's only going to be hot for 5 minutes. In the overall scheme of things, we're going to get a few days of amazing sunshine and heat. Enjoy it. Just, be careful, wear a hat if you're out walking around outside, stay hydrated, just be sensible, avoid staying out in the sun too long, especially drinking alcohol in the sun, and suffering something like heat stroke, because that can make you feel really sick, things like that. Just be sensible, but go out there and enjoy it. If you stay in the shade, kind of like helps a little bit, have a canopy, even walk around with an umbrella if you get a bit of shade, but at least you're getting all that vitamin D, which we're not getting so much of when it's not as sunny. So do it. Wear shorts. Apparently you've got light receptors on the back of your knees, right? And it's really important that you go out and bathe your body in the sun, and really activate all your processes within your system to generate all the good vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you need to stay healthy and vibrant. I always say this: we are solar beings. We are solar beings, and therefore, as a consequence, light and sunshine is really key to us. So when it is hot and sunny, do what you need to do to stay cool if you need to stay cool. But there's a lot of benefit that you're going to gain from having some exposure to the sunshine, unless obviously you've got a pre-existing condition that means you can't go into the sun or you're a vampire.
Exactly. Interesting about the lights and receptors behind the knees. I'm going to be shining a torch there now.
I think it's got to be sunlight.
The sunlight, yeah.
not your torch or an iPhone light.
Ooh, I can feel the light.
You can get those UV. I think, is it the UV lights or the lamps simulate sunlight because it's got the same waves
or something,
that are emitted from the lamps. Quite expensive, but if you're indoors quite a lot, and especially if you work in a room where there's no windows, it's important to get something like that. It's a good investment because therefore you won't get any deficiencies from missing out on sunlight.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And on that note, what we'll do is revert to the art of thinking without thinking, and let's see if we can manifest something to do with what we've been talking about. So I'm just going to pick a random page. Do you want to stop, or shall I just pick one?
You go, man. You go. It's all you.
All right. Stop. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Ooh, look at that. Be a bee.
What number is that?
Page 198.
98.
Kind of nice. Summer, bees. I haven't seen many bees around, but it could be related.
I could hear a buzzing. I was wondering if that was a bee there for a second. Okay. Right. Be a bee. Be a bee. All right. So for the viewers, okay, what we've got here, or for the listeners, is a picture of a bee. And it's there's kind of a green huey background to that, but the bee is in flight and its tail is glowing bright yellow. Okay, and the koan is just BAB, as in B as in BE, and a bee as in the fly, BEE. All right, so that's the image there for the people that are watching this on video. Okay. So, Mr. Jatinder,
what does that mean? What does that mean?
what subtle experience did you get by not thinking about this?
So the initial one was just that it was a bee and it was related to summer, and the kind of shiny tail bit. It looks like it's almost flying in front of the sun. So when you look at that picture, that was kind of nice to see that it could be related to what we were talking about earlier. And just the classic line of Muhammad Ali, right? Float like I forgot what it is. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
All right, so there's a bit more to it. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. The hands can't hit what the eyes can't see.
Ooh,
yeah. So
they often forget that one.
Most people forget about that bit and they just focus on the first thing. It's quite common that quotes are shortened for ease of getting it onto a caption space, for instance, onto a banner or advert, whatever it might be. But also, people just want to say the things that they want to say. And not necessarily bring full context into things.
Yeah, but yeah. So on that, it was just in my mind, I'm hearing a bee being busy, busying away, getting on with his day, right? Going to the flowers, strolling around, flying off to the next bit, and just being its own essence in a way, right? And then the element of the sting from the Muhammad Ali quote is like when it needs to, it makes an impact to, whatever seems to be stopping it from doing its own little busy bee things.
Absolutely.
So, so that's what initially came up, it's just like this creature just getting on with his day, getting on with what it needs to get done. So, like, it kind of represents life in a way. You go out, you work, you come back to your home, right? And then everything you've collected or done, you're gathering at home in a way to give to the queen, right? Right. And it's just the reflection of life in that context. So, yeah, interesting.
Good insights. Okay, good insights. You're along the right lines.
Isn't it interesting how, when you actually think about it, like what we do, so much of that stuff is already kind of happening in nature, isn't it? Like nature is just doing its thing. right? And we're so similar in that context. The only difference being is we're more conscious, I suppose, of the thoughts and decisions and choices that we make. But like it goes to work, comes home, we're kind of doing that as well, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Mother Nature has all the answers, and we are a product of Mother Nature. We are a part of Mother Nature, not apart from Mother Nature. Therefore, we are also subjected to the same laws, okay, and the same behaviors and the properties and characteristics. We seldom recognize it though, because we're, as human beings, can get stuck in our own ego identities of being this super race that are intelligent and everything else is dumb. But actually, intelligence is in everything, right? So, and it's quite fitting what we were talking about right at the beginning about it being, we're having such glorious weather here in the UK right now, and the sun shining bright, is really hot for a change, and that no matter what, there are going to be people that complain about things. Now, if you bring it, I'm going to bring this right back down to the core, the essence of this koan. A bee focuses on the nectar within a flower. Okay, it focuses on the good nutritional elements within the flower, and it harvests that, and it takes it back home, and it literally makes sweet honey. Okay, right? It's focusing on the sweetness of life to create a life that's full of sweetness. In fact, his home is full of sweetness that's been collected from around the gardens, from the different flowers and so on, working in a community together to make that sweet home. Okay. But on the flip side, you got flies. Now, let's just take a fly. Flies, they focus on shit. Okay. They focus on all the dirtiness there, if I was to kind of put it into context, because excrement is not good for you, right? Okay, I mean, you could take excrement from cows or something like that, and you could use that as fertilizer, for instance. But in this case, right, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about flies that hover around excrement, and then if we were to take that as an analogy, it's focusing on the negative stuff. Okay, and it doesn't build anything. In fact, it spreads negativity. It spreads the excrement and the germs from that excrement, and spreads disease. Okay, it spreads illness. Right. And on the flip side, we've got this bee, and really, it takes very little effort to focus on excrement, but it takes hard work, and hard work to focus on the sweetness of life, on the nectar of life, and building sweetness within your life. Okay, this is why and you mentioned it earlier, that bees are always referred to as busy bees, yeah, because they're always working, right? They don't create these beehives that are full of, these amazing architecture and the symmetry within these honeycombs that they create, and then they fill it with all this sweet honey, right? With nothing. It takes a lot of hard work, and it takes more than one of them to do that. It takes a community of them to do that. Right. Whereas what do flies build? What do they build? Do they have communities? I don't know if they have communities, but they don't seem to build anything. They do spread disease. They do spread germs, right? So the idea being, it's really important to understand what you focus on. So right at the beginning, we start this conversation talking about a human nature to be negative, always complain about something. Right? It's easy to do that because your intrinsic nature is to do that. And everyone around you, if they're coded that way, will be doing the same thing. So it's easy for you to continue and perpetuate that behavior. But it's spreading disease and illness, isn't it? It's an illness of the mind that becomes an illness of the body, because all you're doing is spreading filth.
Yeah, exactly.
But why spread filth? Do a bit of work and reset your mind, reframe your mind, change your attitude, and focus it on something positive, right? Or focus it on, forget even the word positive, because again, positive, negative has been overused, overplayed. And I'm tired of hearing the word positive, to be honest. Fuck positive. Focus on nectar, the amber nectar in your life. What is the nectar in your life? What is the sweetness that you want in life? And you go out there and harvest it. You go out there and build it, build something out of it. But you need to put some work into it, because it ain't going to come to you. Like it doesn't come to the bee. The bee doesn't just all of a sudden, use the law of attraction and say, I want to be positive, and then bang, a beehive full of honey appears, right? It doesn't. It has to do the work. And if you're not doing the work, you're not going to get the results.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So being a bee is the essence of focusing on the nectar and building that sweetness in your life. And
it's just interesting also that, like, when you well, in nature, obviously with the bees, when they create their little beehive where the honey is made and put together kind of thing, right? But then you have humans who have created bee farms, yeah, where they've created these places for the bees, and how they structure the actual like housing of where the bees actually go and create the honey, and then how they can actually utilize these housing to extract the honey from it, and then the honey is actually packaged and shipped and put out and actually distributed amongst humans, and it's got many health benefits. Yeah. So it's like, the sweetness is, I think you're collecting the sweetness, focusing on the nectar, and even the end product of it is like very powerful, because I've heard apparently that if you got hay fever, for example, buy local honey, because it's supposed to help with that. And obviously honey helps with many other ailments as well. And this is just coming out of nature's goodness, right? And then on the flip side, a fly could just land on your food and you can be ill and just, puke up and mess up, and all of a sudden you got all this thing going on. So it's so interesting to see these polarities in nature work out and play. But you're on one side, you're seeing like community and construction and collaboration. And then on the other side, you're just seeing mess and total destruction and, randomness in a way. And it's so interesting to see that actually you can't necessarily do it on your own. You need that community element, you know? It's quite simple. If you think about like this planet is nothing without humans. Without that connection and communication with other human beings and that collaboration, there's nothing here. Like obviously from nature, you got animals and whatnot, but in terms of a human being, a relationship and being a living, what else is there to do in that context? So it's better to be community, build a community, work together to extract the nature and create good honey.
Absolutely. And a few years ago, it was just before the pandemic, I read an article about the top reasons why people live over 100 years. And I think I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast. And along the same lines, this study was extended to why people die youngest in certain areas of the world. And the scientist that did this research, he on the maps, circled areas on the map that had concentration of people that lived over 100 years in this blue marker, and they became known as blue zones. And the study discovered that the number one reason that people lived over 100 years old wasn't because of good nutrition, wasn't because of exercise and so on. It was because of community. Was the number one reason. And on the flip side, the reason why people died early was in, and there were areas where that was happening a lot, was because of a lack of community. So community is not only the reason for your success and longevity, but it's also the lack of it is a reason for your demise and shortening of your life. Okay, so it's something to bear in mind that we are social creatures. We are social creatures, and we've got a lot more in common with bees than we think we do. Okay, bees, like you said, are communal creatures. They are collaborative creatures. When we collaborate as human beings, we can create amazing things. We can create technology. We can create roads and buildings and whatnot. Okay, we can. We take clothing as granted, but we can create machines that can weave the clothing for us now, or print the clothing, or however the clothing is made. Whereas back in the day, you'd have to create the yarn and then knit it together.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we are collaborative people, and in fact, when we work in harmony with one another, we tend to be happier, which is why if you work in a team environment where you've got team members that really gel together, you feel harmonious and happy. But when you have even one member of the team that is creating disharmony, then the team starts to get upset. Everybody in the team starts to get upset, and the morale starts to drop. Okay, and the productivity starts to drop. Productivity also is a consequence of you wanting to have your teammates back. Okay, all of their backs, right? So you want to do something because you don't want to let them down, not because you want to stand out as the top dog out of all of them, because that's not team playing. Okay, because that will create unrest again. Okay, so collaboration is you do things because you want to make other people proud of you, but you also want to do something for them that's going to be good for them and beneficial for them. So when you start to do that, you actually start to create an amazing team, an amazing dynamic, and productivity just goes. Okay, so productivity, the key to productivity is working together, collaboration, harmony, and happiness. Okay, harmony.
It's interesting you say that, Lex, because I was just looking up some facts about bees here, and it was to look at the queen controls the population of the hive, right? And then you have the smaller bees that are called worker bees, right? And they're the ones collecting the honey and maintaining the hive, while the larger males, they're also called drones, which is quite interesting, So it's interesting that there's like a hierarchy in this community as well, that's being maintained in a natural way. And I'm just reading up some of these facts about bees, which I found quite interesting, man. Did you know they can fly at 20 miles per hour?
I know they're pretty fast. I didn't know how speed it was. I mean, 20 miles an hour is probably the fastest most humans can run, if that.
Wow.
So it's hard to outrun a bee is what that means. So for those of you that are, frightened of bees, just be mindful. On the flip side, guys, right, for the audience here, bees are gentle creatures. They're not out there to sting you. They only sting you if they feel threatened. Okay, right, or their community feels threatened, or their home feels threatened. Okay, and when you see these bee workers, and there's some bee workers that don't wear any protection whatsoever, and they are so gentle with the bees, and they've got bees all over them, and bees never sting them because they know how to work in harmony with them. They understand the bees and the way they operate. There's a harmony there. There's an understanding there between the beekeeper and the bees themselves. Okay.
And you know what's fascinating, like based on what you just said there, is like the sting you were talking about. So they say that a bee will basically die after it loses its sting.
Yeah.
Like that would mean like, I don't know. I mean, obviously we can't we have a different brain structure, and then bees work in nature and however they do. But it would know that if it made a sting, it's gone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So why would they want to just do that just randomly? It just doesn't make sense, innit? It's like, like a last resort almost.
No, but on that note, though, if it's a last resort, I mean, I don't know bee psychology or the reason bees do things, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that does understand this. But if like I mentioned earlier, if you try and attack a beehive, or try and break a beehive, or try and hurt a bee, then it will become agitated and violent. And I've also read that when a bee gets attacked, it will call its mates, right? So you're not going to get attacked by one; you're going to get an army of them that are going to look out for each other. So you're right. If you get stung by a bee, it's, in essence, isn't it giving its life to protect its own family?
Yeah.
Isn't that the ultimate sacrifice that that bee's doing it to protect its home, its family home, or its family members? Isn't that's beautiful in its own right, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure there's different types of bees, and some bees are more aggressive than other bees, and so on. And there's a whole science behind this, I'm sure, which I don't understand, and nor do I attest to it. But just from a layman's standpoint, I'm gonna claim to be a layman on this, is that there's a lot more to it. But there are these beautiful lessons that we can take away. And one of the things that a bee protecting its own community is a beautiful thing. But it doesn't go out looking for trouble, from what I understand, to go and do it willy-nilly. I mean, when I see a bee, I send it love, because we already know that we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for bees pollinating the plants and the crops and things that actually provide the food and sustenance that we need to survive on, right? And if you eat meat, for instance, the crops that we're feeding to the animals that people are consuming, again, the bees are pollinating these crops. So when you think about it, the bees are serving us in a much grander way than we're serving the bees. I mean,
I was just reading what you're just saying, that apparently humanity would only humanity would have only 4 years of life left if the bees died out.
Yeah, we are 100% dependent on the bees. But
wow, that's quite crazy, right?
From what I know, and again, for the audience, educators, by leaving comments on the video, or on the podcast, if there's a way to do that, by all means, help us understand this. But I don't really know how we're serving the bees. I mean, what are we doing for the bees? It seems like they're actually doing a service to us. But what services are we providing for the bees, other than ruining their environments by concreting everything and destroying nature?
So check this out, Lex. So Albert Einstein apparently said that if the bees disappeared from the surface of the globe, humanity would have only 4 years of life left, as food crops would have no one to pollinate them. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
And you're right. What are we doing for them?
That's been known for quite a while, which is why there's a lot of organizations that are trying to protect the bees. So it's important to understand that. But it's we need to protect the things that are protecting us. Isn't that just natural? Isn't that nature's order, right? So we can learn from these bees. And here's the thing, right? I mean, I don't know for a fact, but just a hypothetical question here. If you had one beehive here and another beehive here, or if you're in a beehive and you got one bee farm stack and another bee farm stack and another bee farm stack, I don't know what you call them, but those wooden boxes with the bees in them. I have never known or anybody read anything where it says that where you've got multiple bee stacks that they start to attack each other because they're trying to protect their communities, right? So as bees, do bees just look after bees and they just live harmoniously until somebody tries to attack them? I don't know, but it's an interesting kind of thought I had there. So why do we do it as human beings? Why do we have I get it, we have football teams, but what about when football teams start to get violent against other football teams and start to, bash people around and, attack people because their team lost or whatever, right? Or one city against another city or one gang against another gang. Why does that happen? What is it that's dysfunctional in human beings that the bees seem to kind of be more intelligent about and don't seem to do that? Again,
very interesting.
So this is one for the bee experts out there. Maybe somebody could tell us, some of the behaviors behind bees in different colonies or communities of bees and how they behave with one another. But I've never read anything around that, and I love nature, and I do watch a lot of stuff on nature, and it's interesting. But maybe there's a bit more to it that we can learn from bees than.
So I just typed it in. Do bees attack other hives? And it says honeybees will sometimes rob or attempt to rob the hives of nests or other honey bee colonies.
Why?
It says when this happens, as with the scenario with stingless bees described above, bees will fight each other to the death to protect their food stores.
Okay.
Survival. So to protect their food stores. So is that what you said? They're protecting the community.
Survival.
So this is interesting. Like bees are making me fascinated. The whole thing about be like water now is turned into be like nature.
Well, isn't it? Even be like water is be like nature, right? And be like a bee is like be like nature. If you think about it, back in the day when farming started, right? When farming started in India, right? In India, I can definitely say this used to happen in India. What they used to do was they used to have the villages, and the villages that used to farm, they used to produce their crops and they used to store it in a communal grain store, okay? And the wealth of the village was assessed by how much grain they had in their grain store. Okay. And when taxation started and the little different kingdoms, had jurisdiction over certain villages and towns and so on, what they would do is they would tax a grain store. Okay. It wasn't money, it was grain. Okay. Right. But that grain was the whole village's grain. They'd all work together and fill their coffers up, their grain coffers. Yeah. Right. And they'd share that. That was what they would eat out of. And they would say if they had, I think became a measure of a grain store, like a room of grain. And there was a measure of how big one of these grain stores were. And if you had many of these grain stores, then you were wealthy. Okay. And therefore you could survive for several years on the grain that you've got there. Yeah. And when these towns or villages used to get raided, they were raiding the food stores. Yeah. So that the story that thing that you just read there about the bees stealing other bees' honey is interesting. Because I don't know. Do bees survive on honey? I know they produce it. Is that what they live off?
Very good question. Very good question. I think I'm going to have to look into this because there's so much fascinating things here about bees.
There's more coming out of this. This koan is, again, it's about conscious awareness, okay? The whole podcast is about consciousness, and to become conscious or raise your state of consciousness is to start asking yourself about these questions. And what we've just done is started to take the human race and what we do and how we behave, and start to look at what are bees doing, for instance. Is this similar kind of, do they have similar kind of traits, and why do they do stuff like that? And if it's basic survival, then yeah, all right, I get it. Okay. And that's intrinsic primal behavior for humans as well, isn't it?
And this is the thing, isn't it? Because like what you said earlier on about how we are of nature, humans are of nature. We're not different to the animal in a sense. Like whatever we're doing is part of our psyche, is part of what nature allows us to do, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah. And I think we just somehow think we're on top of the food chain for whatever reason, instead of thinking, no, we're in harmony with the system. And if more people thought like that, it would probably mean a better impact on everybody around us.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you who's at the top of the food chain, and it's not humans. It's fungus. Yeah. And I tell you why. Because when we die, and whether we're cremated and we're spread out amongst nature, or whether we were buried and we decompose, it's fungus that takes all the nutrients and minerals away from whatever's left as part of us, and then disperses it back into nature, into other plants, and spreads it around. And ultimately, fungus is the most intelligent organism and network of organisms that exists. Amazing. And we wouldn't exist without it.
That's true.
So another dependency on a part of nature that we have, that we don't give enough credit to.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I mean, there's a colleague of mine who was talking about these things, about how like microbes and all this kind of smaller world stuff within the body, right, is going on. Now we wouldn't actually be anything without this bacteria, without all these things that have made up this human body as well, which is really fascinating, because it's like how one thing can influence everything in that chain. Oh man, we're going deep now, because it's almost, you could go in either direction. You could go upwards as above, as they say, right? And you could go downwards as below, and you'll find similarities in that range of things in the mystical world.
and I think this fungus that I'm talking about is known as mycelium. Okay, and it's. They say mycelium is this amazing network of fungus that, now, if you imagine the brain, it's got all these neural networks that connects all these aspects of our brain and so on, and then connects that to our limbs, so we can propriocept and have this motor cognition and so on. Well, all the plants also have a neural network, and that's mycelium. It's this, what we refer to as a fungus, but it's this intelligent network that is underneath the ground and sometimes over the ground, but mainly underneath the ground, that connects everything. Trees talk to one another through this, okay, through their roots and through the mycelium and so on. Plants talk to one another. When a mother tree dies, it gives up all its nutrients to all of its children trees. Right? Did you know that? Right?
Yeah. That's amazing.
So there's some absolutely amazing things happening in nature that, we do exhibit these behaviors. When you ever seen it, when somebody's, of age, and just before they pass, and they know that their time is coming, they start to put their properties in other people's names and start to give their wealth away, and start to spread everything, start to write a will and so on, because it's almost like a tree giving its nutrients to all of its children, let's just say a parent that is of age or knows his or her time is coming, they start to do that as well. It's almost kind of like a similar kind of behavior, isn't it?
Exactly.
But it's using physical possessions. But it's not like, you're going to say, I want to give part of this body to you, right? It's kind of more material in a way, but the behavior is the same, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're giving resources, aren't you?
Yep. Absolutely.
And I think again, with when it comes back to consciousness, and the whole Martial Mind Power podcast is about raising consciousness, and with consciousness awareness is actually what's happened in this particular podcast, which we haven't done in a while, to this degree, is we've gone into a divergent way of thinking. All right, which is we've opened it up. And the thing is, our society, our schooling, the environment, the government, the laws, the rules, the regs and everything else is very convergent. You've got to do things this way because it creates some law and order. And I get it. There's good reasons for that as well, right? But it's very convergent, as in it's prescriptive almost, right? In other words, you don't have much flexibility in how you can work within those parameters. Just stay within those parameters, and you breach them, you're breaking something, you're violating a law or a rule or reg or whatever it might be. But when it comes to raising consciousness, actually, rather than this convergent way of thinking, you've got to split it out, turn this triangle, instead of on its tail, upside down. So now you're going upwards, right? And all of a sudden now you start to open up into questions. So what does this remind you of? Doesn't this remind you of when you was a little kid and you had all these questions that you wanted answers to?
Yep, that's right.
That's what divergent thinking is.
Yeah.
Wake up your inner child.
Exactly. And it's the questions that allow you to open your mind and think different. Because if you don't ask the questions, then it's like you said, you're going to keep doing whatever's coming up. But if you ask the question, it will get you to think different.
Absolutely.
And you will get, you ask the question, you will get challenged. People will say, why are you asking that question? This is how it's meant to be. You got to do it this way. Yeah. And just like a child, why? How come? Why do we think like this? Yeah. And the interesting thing is, like, if you go to coaches, mentors, you go to martial art instructors and you ask them, like, how come we do it? How come we are doing it this way? And they give you the explanation of it, right? It basically opens up your mind. I remember one of our lessons, we were training, and you were sharing a technique with us. And I can't remember what the technique was. I think it was a punching technique that you were teaching. And it was broken down into like 3 or 4 steps. I can't exactly remember. I remember the concept that came out of it. And you told us to do this exercise, and we're doing this exercise, and I'm training with my partner. And I'm like, why are we punching like this for? It seems so inefficient. And the partner I was with basically turned around and said, no, Lax is teaching, do it that way. It's got to be done that way. I said, but it doesn't make sense. And then you took a break, and then you said, okay, now this punch I taught you, forget it, because you're not meant to do it like this. You do it like this. So you showed the more efficient way, which is exactly what I was talking about with the partner. And then when we started doing it, I just put my hands up saying, see, I was right. The guy was talking about creating the efficient way of doing it. And you didn't even question it. Like, the question didn't even come up for you. Like, why are we doing it this way when there's a better way to do it? But had I just not thought about it, I may have got a deeper understanding out of that whole situation because I questioned it, right? As opposed to just doing it. And because you then explained how it worked, it made sense. Yeah. So it's good to ask these questions and figure out why were we doing certain things in a certain way, because there may be a very good reason for it. But we won't know until we ask.
Absolutely. And this is why, if you don't ask a question, you stay a fool for a lifetime. But ask a question. Ask a question, no matter how foolish you think it is at that moment in time. And oftentimes I've been in meetings where I've got a niggling question in my mind. And, when you're trying to establish yourself or establish credibility, it's very easy to think that if I ask a real basic question, that people are going to think, hey, he's stupid. But actually, you'll be surprised how many other people are thinking the same thing. And they thank you, whether they thank you secretly or whether they actually openly come out with it and say, I really appreciate you asking that question because I was thinking the same thing. but I couldn't quite put my finger on it or couldn't quite articulate it. But now that you've questioned it this way, that's exactly what I was thinking too. And the number of times that happens is actually quite common and frequent. Why? Because you're always learning. And if you think you know it all, then may the force, may the force be with you, because you already know it all. So then you don't need to listen to this. All right, but that's the point. You're always learning, and there is no stupid question. And if you're met with a jerk that will make you feel stupid for asking a question, do you know what? That person's just insecure about something. It's not you, it's them. So just remember that. There is no question that is a stupid question. You can obviously have a bit of humor about it, and that's okay, because life shouldn't be taken too seriously. You should laugh and joke about things, and that should be part of the fun of it. But do it in a way that you lift people up while you're doing it, and have a bit of laughter, because laughter is uplifting anyway. And educating people and empowering people and inspiring people is easy to tell somebody something. It's hard to teach somebody whilst inspiring, educating, and empowering an individual. Okay, that's what this podcast is all about. And ultimately raising human consciousness, which has happened.
Question everything.
So, and this is the thing. Question when you need to question. Don't just question for the sake of questioning things. Sometimes you need to screen your questions, because sometimes your questions might not make sense to you when you repeat it back to yourself. So how's it going to make sense to anybody else, right? So it's important to understand, question your question before you ask it, because you must be clear on it. As I say, the golden rule should be: clarity in questions will give you clarity in answers, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to mine gold, you must have golden questions in the first place. All right. Shit questions are going to get shit results. Shit answers. That's when you're going to get ridiculed, right? Because they just don't make sense, right?
Question your questions.
Question your questions. Make sure your question makes sense, is clear and concise. And that tenacious curiosity is important. Have that tenacious curiosity, because if you don't have that, you've kind of given up. But keep that alive, because it's like that inner child, right? You have that inner childlike curiosity and that tenacity to keep questioning things, because you're constantly learning, and learn in the area that that's going to bring nectar into your life. Ask questions in those areas where you're going to create sweetness in your life. Honestly, the number of times I have this conversation with people, I cannot remember anymore, is forget positivity, but what do you want your life to be like? Create that life, make that your life. Where is your nectar coming from, and how are you going to create that sweetness when you harvest that? And what kind of beautiful home are you going to build for yourself, where you can live in that sweetness, in the comfort of your family and safety, and enjoy the abundance of the hard work that you do when you go out and be of service to the world. The bee analogy and the bee behavior is there's a lot there, but this current is really focusing on one very small element of it, but we've just asked a whole bunch of divergent questions around bees and humans and nature and fungi and being a fun guy and so on. And it's important that you do that, because that's where it all starts. But mindset, attitude, change it. If it's not serving you, change it. Focus it reframe it from fucking excrement to nectar. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the wisdom bomb for today.
Absolutely, man. Chase the honey.
Or you can chase the honeys.
Chase the honey.
So I think on that note, I think I should read the koan. What do you reckon?
Just before that, just remind me, my grandfather used to say in it, "Shad nu makhiyan pendiyan," right? And shad is honey, nectar, but also something that's sweet and really good is also considered to be like a simile kind of, this nectar is like gold almost kind of thing, right? So they say anything that's nectar and sweet, the bees will go towards it. So if you're a good person, for example, people will gravitate towards you. That's what my grandfather used to mean by, shad nu makhiyan pendiyan. So anything that's sweet and nectar, the bees will go, they'll gather towards that thing, so just bear that in mind that you're gold.
Do you know what? You've just reminded me of something actually, because do you know what the Punjabi word for nectar is?
Shad.
No, there's another word.
There's another one. Amrit.
Yes. Okay.
Amrit.
All right. And the Golden Temple, right, is got another name. What is it?
Amrit Sahib.
Yeah, Amrit Sahib or Amritsar, right? Which is the house of nectar. Okay.
Exactly.
The house of nectar. And when Sikhs get baptized, what do they take?
Amrit. Baptized water.
Starts with sweetness, starts with nectar, right? You start with nectar and you carry on building it, yeah? And just think about that for a second, yeah? Just think about it for a second. It's even ceremonial in its nature. And
That's
I just kind of had that kind of epiphany there for a moment when you started, when you shared that quote about Shahid. So it's appearing in many different ways, but did you recognize it?
Absolutely.
Did you recognize it? Or do you recognize it? Can you see it? Because if you can see something now that you didn't see before you started listening to this podcast, then I'm grateful that we've been of value here today discussing be a bee, because that's the whole point. One little thing you take away that adds value to your life and enriches your life, that can make your life better, and you can share with other people, is what this is all about. So go and do it. Go and spread that nectar. Now, when I'm talking about, nectar or the amber nectar, we're not talking about the Foster's beer, right? But even Foster's beer, they call it amber nectar, the Australians, right? They advertise it as nectar.
That's right.
They're spreading the sweetness, right? And all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, I want a beer, right? Because you get that sense of nectar is this pure sweetness of life, right? And really it's trying to give you that sensation of pure sweetness. But where is your pure sweetness? Is it in a beer, or where is it? Go find it, go create it, go imagine it. It's important. You imagine it and then start to do things that start to bring that into your life, because too many people put that nectar out of reach. It's out of reach. I can't do that. I can't have that. That won't happen, right? This is a dream, out of reach, and push it away, push it away, push it away. Fuck that. Bring it in. Yeah? Bring it in and let it be part of you. Let it be part of your life. Go out there and get it. Just change your mindset as if you got it. So, shall I read the koan?
Go for it. Go for it.
All right, here we go. It's quite a short koan, guys. So it reads, a fly focuses on filth and excrement and will fly over all the beautiful radiant flowers. A bee, on the other hand, focuses on the sweet nectar of the most beautiful flowers to make honey. It takes no effort to focus on filth, excrement, and faults in other things. It takes a lot of effort to focus on beauty and the good in everything to make a sweet life like the bee. Be a bee.
Wow.
There you have it. Okay.
Absolutely, man. Wow. That was deep. And I think on that note, Sifu Lak, Chloe, if you listeners want to find out more, check out the book, The Art of Thinking Without Thinking, which is available at Amazon, or go to martianmindpower.com to find out more. And I think that's it for myself and Sifu Lak, Chloe.
That's it from me, brother. That's it from me. May everybody's lives be filled with the nectar, the divine nectar of the universe, and may you spread the sweetness into everything that you come across within your life, and make other people's lives richer for you just being in it. Okay. And if you could do that, then the world would be a sweeter place.
Amazing. So there you go, folks. Until next time, thank you very much.